And this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and
plus
beer.
years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Saying community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dispatch here with me, the Raspy Dispatcher. Today I wanted to take a moment to highlight my best friend. We've known each other since we were kids, and she has convinced me to join an adult basketball league. So if you're listening to this and you haven't heard from me in a while after the recording of this episode, no to blame my best friend Christina. She tricked me into thinking I was in some sort of shape to run up and down a full court and participate in this basketball league. So if you haven't heard from me, I probably didn't survive. So blame her. I'm kidding a little bit. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to create and shape good habits, which is what my next guest is all about. Joining me today is Edie, creator of Shape Good Habits. Hello.
Hi, how are you, Ashley?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good. So excited to be here.
I'm so excited to see you. I met you in person in my first trip to APCO, the dispatcher conference. You made me feel like a superstar. It was so wonderful.
Well, I think you're a superstar.
Oh, you're so sweet.
I was so delighted to find you online.
Oh my gosh, same. And after we met at APCO, exchanged information and followed each other on TikTok and whatnot, and just been really being able to embrace in what each other is creating. And it's one of the great things about APCO, right, is being able to connect with so many like-minded folks in the dispatch realm.
Yeah. It's so good to see people in person after 2 years of COVID.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. So tell me a little bit about yourself, what you're doing out here for dispatchers and first responders alike.
Okay. So we can do the long story or the short story. Let's do the short story. I was in dispatch in the 80s and 90s, probably before a lot of your audience was born. I started dispatching in 83.
Oh, wow.
And stayed with it until about 2001. I took a 4-year hiatus. I moved away and ended up back in the dispatch center and thought, well, I'm going to go back where I started because they're the people I love. So I left in 2001 and I went on to go to school. I became a counselor, and then I was called to seminary to become a pastor, and I served as a chaplain for 9 years, and then I retired. While I was a chaplain, I did doctoral work on compassion fatigue and how to address it with spiritual practices, because that was what got me out of 911. That's what brought me under when I was in counseling, and that's what tripped me up when I was a chaplain. I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And I figured out a lot about it. I'm not a world-renowned expert. I'm just somebody who's lived it and studied it both.
Well, and I think that's what makes people great at these things, right? Is that we have these lived experiences, and then we go find more information about it in order to help folks like us who are having those same lived experiences.
Yeah. Someone posted on, I think it was on 911 Wonder Woman the other day, be the mentor that you needed when you were young. I'm like, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to rescue me.
So true. And we need that. We all need that guiding hand in some way, shape, or form, and at different points in our lives, right? Definitely. Yeah. And so how did Shape Good Habits come to be?
Well, so I did the doctoral work with the staff members at the children's home where I was a chaplain. They have really a very stressful position because they're working with adolescents who have mental health and behavioral health problems. They're on shift work. They're underpaid. They don't know who they're going to be working with. And sometimes there's friction in that. So there's a lot of similarities to dispatch, a lot. No control over the environment, and you're stuck. You cannot leave. There's no going out to lunch.
Yeah.
Because you've got to be there. And so I was seeing some of the same behavior problems because compassion fatigue doesn't affect just one person. If one person is suffering and the behaviors come up from the pain-based behaviors, it starts to deteriorate the relationships in the team, and the deteriorating relationships spiral down, and it gets worse and worse and worse without intervention, without some understanding of what's going on. And so we see that a lot in 911. We see toxic relationships start to form. We see the environment going downhill, just downhill. And then what happens is people get disgusted and they go find another job. It's often in another 911 center. But still, they've left. So you get short-staffed and people get overtired. And so we get crankier and more people leave. And when new people come in, they feel like they've entered into a snake pit. They don't stay. I mean, the work is inherently stressful, but dealing with other people's negativity makes it worse. And so we have this incredible spiral that's going on. And I absolutely believe that we have the power to change this. We have the power already. We don't need some knight in shining armor to come and fix us. We need to take responsibility for ourselves and for our relationships with ourselves and with each other. And we can do this. We can have an environment that's awesome. I've been out of 911 since 2001. And some of my best friends are people that I worked with in the comm center. Powerful relationships can be formed. It really is a community that can bond. We can do this.
It truly is. And I think one of the things that I've said quite often is, the job is hard enough, right? Like we don't need anything extra on top of the job in itself. Does the job of being hard enough. But we do have to leave space and realities that we are people doing the job that's already hard. And we have our own baggage, our own lives, our own things that we're all bringing into our comm centers. And like you said, we have to take responsibility for that, owning that, acknowledging it, creating space to heal from it, and then support each other in it without letting it spew all extra negative vibes in a job that's already challenging in itself.
And not only can we develop the habits, I'm all about the habits, right? The habits that we need to keep ourselves healthy, not just emotionally healthy, but physically healthy, because our physical health makes a huge difference in our emotional health. If you've ever tried to help an injured dog, you know what I'm talking about. You can't get close to them. They snap and snarl. And so when we have the emotional injuries that we have, or we start physically deteriorating, we become harder and harder and harder to get along with. And so we need to not only take care of ourselves, we need to recognize the stress that other people are under and give them a break. Don't take it personally. That's hard to do because it feels so personal.
Yeah.
When somebody calls you out and calls you names, it feels personal. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
There's always something deeper going on, right? And I think those are the moments, especially in our comm centers, that we really need to have plans and avenues. And a lot of this comes from like leadership as well, kind of built in, where where people know they can have those outlets before there is some type of big exchange or blow up or something that causes someone not to be able to come into work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of times in the conversations on the Facebook groups, a lot of times people tell tales of supervisors who are truly suffering, and it's showing in how they're treating people. And that's, I was a shift supervisor when I was at my worst, and I was horrible to my people, and I'm not proud of that. I'm not. And I don't have excuses for it, except I didn't realize how sick I had gotten. And when I got help and started really being able to examine how I was being, I was a source of toxicity. I ended up leaving that agency. I went back to being a line dispatcher. I went back to being a line dispatcher in a smaller agency, working by myself until I could figure out how to get along with other people. So I was on the night shift alone for about 3 years. I'm a slow learner, but I learned.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it takes that, right? Being able to acknowledge that because we're not all perfect. We're not always gonna have the right answers or, give the support that everyone's needing. And sometimes we need to take a step back and figure out how to really work on ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes alone. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're a supervisor and you get complaints of so-and-so's being pissy to me, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
If you haven't actually observed the behavior, how do you manage that? And so that's a slippery slope. And when you're having to call people in to work mandatory overtime because you're short-staffed, who has time for that?
Yeah.
And so it's a vicious circle. It really is. Non-confrontation does not help you.
Yeah. And one of the things that I try to leave space for, especially with my managers, is they have no one likes to force people in on their day off. No one likes to be like, I know when my supervisor messages me, it's not to ask how my day is, it's to force me in. So even though I might not be the happiest of campers that I'm being forced in on my day off, I don't try to put that back on my supervisor because it's not their fault either. They have to do this job. It is what it is. It's my turn. And hopefully I'm being forced for a reason, that because my coworker needs that time or, whatever it is. And that's just kind of the field of work we're in. But I think we got to cut our supervisors and managers a little slack too, because they have a tough job. They're always the bearer of bad news, right? It's like, so that's a hard job in itself.
Yeah. And one of the most devastating things as a supervisor was having to call somebody on the carpet for errors that were made on a call when I knew that they had worked too many hours that week. I mean, it's devastating because you can't let it slide, because what you tolerate becomes the norm. You cannot let things slide. And it hurts. It hurts. It hurts to care about your people and not be in a place to fix things. One of the things I think needs to change, and I see that it's changing some. Roxy Van Gundy, I think, has done a lot of work in helping her agency change how they hire. When I was there, and that, granted, it was last century, but I don't think it's changed that much. It was a 3 months minimum from when you ask for applications to when you could hire somebody. That was the minimum.
Yeah.
Depending on how busy the detectives were, because our background checks were not a high priority to them. There's other things going on. There's crime.
Mhm.
And there's background checks for police officers. So
Mhm.
who are you going to help?
Yeah. No, I definitely think the process is still very long. And it's actually one of the questions that I get quite frequently, like on my YouTube channel, in my DMs, is like, hey, I just finished X step. How long until I hear back? And it's kind of like, depends.
Plant some
You,
potatoes. We'll see which gets ripe first.
yeah, exactly. Like this, unfortunately, it is a long process and it isn't something you can apply for and then expect to be hired within a week. It's a long game
Yeah.
you're playing. You're working other jobs, while trying to get into this one and whatnot. So yeah, definitely speeding up that process in some way, shape, or form is beneficial for our comm centers.
Yeah. And I think being intentional about keeping in touch with people would be beneficial. I know
Definitely.
when I was hiring people, I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't our norm. I can't say that I know how it works because I don't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I mean that is advice I give people is like, as an applicant, we want to establish ourselves in this role too. Like, not only am I pursuing you, you should be pursuing me,
mhm.
and I'm not, we shouldn't reach out daily, right? But we should definitely be reaching out and creating those establishments when we
Mhm.
don't hear from each other. Like I tell people, like, don't be afraid to email whoever your point of contact is after
Mhm.
a week or two has passed and you haven't heard anything and there's been no communication as to how much time like you're in backgrounds this step is going to take a while, or if you haven't heard anything, feel free to reach out to that point of contact because it's possible that there's a step in between that they're not aware is slow either. Because
Mhm.
I know at my first agency, we had an in-house like academy that did our hiring, but they would have to constantly call up to HR who handled our backgrounds for our applicants and be like, where
Hello.
where are we? We're trying to get these people in for this next academy. So it's quite possible if they're not hearing from you, you're not hearing from them, that there's just like a gap in between that
Mhm.
the folks who are
Yeah.
actually trying to hire you are not realizing is there yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then the training process takes such a long time. And that's a
mhm.
drain too. It's a drain on our resources.
It
It is
really is.
hard to train. It is so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard to recognize the steps that you need to teach somebody when it's become so natural.
hmm hmm And especially, I think, in a center that is short staffed and they're
Mhm.
trying to get a lot of people hired on, those trainers are constantly training.
Yeah.
And that in itself, I mean,
That'll wear you
has
out.
to be tiring. Yeah.
Mhm.
hmm
Yeah, because you're responsible for your trainees' work.
Exactly. hmm
And sometimes you haven't explained it well enough or they didn't understand it well enough. Who knows whose fault it is, but mistakes
hmm
are made
hmm
and it's part of the process. We make
hmm
mistakes when we're learning something new.
Definitely. And I think
So,
that's definitely one thing if you're listening to this and you're, fresh, new, and under the headset, just getting through your training, you're gonna make mistakes.
yeah.
And I think acknowledging that, understanding that as trainers, putting it out there, yes, mistakes in our line of work hold more weight. So
Mhm.
we need to be more conscious of those ripple effects that happen. But the best way to learn is to do. And the more you do this job, the better at it you're gonna get. And
Mhm.
even I would say 5, 6 years down the road, I'm still learning and I still do make mistakes.
Still learning
And
and still making mistakes. Yes.
yeah, of course they're few and farther between, but we're human. We're
We hope.
humans doing this job.
We hope.
We hope.
And one of the reasons for that, which is very interesting to me, is we have a cap on how many decisions we can make in a day. Did you know
Hmm,
that? We get decision fatigue.
hmm,
Dispatchers seem to be able to expand. They can make more decisions than people who aren't under that kind of pressure. But you do get to a point where it is harder and harder to make a decision. That's why when you're off duty and somebody says, let's go to dinner, and they say, where do you want to go? Your answer is, I don't care. I don't care. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
have you
so
spent 15 minutes with somebody trying to figure out where to go get something to eat?
yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah. It's like, no, I don't. No, please don't make me decide. I got to where I hated going to the grocery store
Oh, wow.
because it was just too many decisions.
Yeah. And
So
sometimes I end up having like tell my partner and my friends, I'm just like, I don't want to talk. Like I listen to people all day long. Like sometimes I just want to sit and not have to absorb, like and not have to interact or be totally like TV on in the background, zoned out, like not having to absorb anything and have to give any feedback. Like let's just be in a room together for a little bit.
that's hard for people to understand,
Mhm.
but it's part of learning how to take care of ourselves is to say, I need this,
Mhm.
and I need you to respect it. And it
Mhm.
is not anything against you. And whether you understand it or not, this is important to me. And so I would appreciate it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
You
And
know?
so, and you created a system that you call the chaos to calm process.
Yes. Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, but I think that there's 3 different areas of our lives that we need to focus on to be able to stay healthy. And I think that we need to do this. We need to do this, that not doing this is like going on a construction site and refusing to wear the helmets, the hard hats. It's like a police officer who won't wear the Kevlar vest. It's just
Yeah.
irresponsible not to. But I think we need to pay attention to compassion, satisfaction, which is the feel good of the work. We have a tendency, because we turn out to be desperately human, to focus on the negative. We need to make a practice, an intentional practice of daily focusing on something positive and recognizing that we need to feel it in our body. We need to actually go there, feel how it feels, and hold on to that feeling as long as we can. We need to do that at least once a day to practice it, to make it part of our daily work. We need to have healthy habits. And I have drawn on the work of James Clear and Charles Duhigg and BJ Fogg. And just a lot of people are talking about habits. And so I have a 4-step process for establishing a new healthy habit or reestablishing a healthy habit. How many of us have let go of habits that we had that were really good?
Yeah.
But the third component is self-awareness. And for self-awareness, I've developed a system to kind of distance ourselves, to be metacognitive, meta-aware of what's going on with ourselves. And so I have named the different aspects of self-awareness the gremlins. And they each have names, and they have little personas. And it kind of distances us from it so that it's not so painful to look at. And that's another thing I recommend daily, checking in with all 5 of your gremlins. We've got Echo, who is our self-concept, Mojo, who's our physical well-being, Pointer, who is our attitude, Sparky, who is our relationships, our temperature in relationships, and Buddy, who is our connection to love, connection to spirit, however we want to talk about that which is beyond. And so these 3 different ways of caring for ourselves are the process. And so I help people recognize that they need the process. And when people choose, I have a group mentoring program where you can come in and I can work with you, and you can be with like-minded people, because it turns out the community is really important,
Yeah.
and that feedback from other people is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So accountability partners form, and it's a powerful thing.
Totally. Community is so relevant and so important. And I think I learned this at a younger age. When I got out of college, I stumbled into a bit of social work, and I did case management. And I worked with adults with developmental disabilities. And every one of my clients, one of their main goals was community. They were all searching for somewhere to belong, like-minded folks, people who are going through similar things, and who they could learn from and
Mhm.
connect with. And I think dispatch as a community, we form really well in supporting each other,
Mhm.
and creating spaces. So when you're creating spaces, in addition, outside of our communities, to be able to work on our gremlins and really
Mhm.
connect with those things, it's super helpful, I think, for making long careers in this type
Mhm.
of work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we want. We want the stop off to not continue to be 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you make it 5 years, that's pretty dang good.
Hey, I'm there.
You made it?
Yep, so far so good.
How long you been in it?
I'm coming up on 5 years now. Coming
That's
up on
awesome.
5.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
No, it's been a lot of fun. I've been really lucky, I think, so far in my experience in my comm center, because I know talk to me people talk to me, on the social medias and stuff, and I've had people ask her, like, hey, like, is dispatch like really toxic? Like, is it really like worth it? And I tell people, like, there are people who experience toxic centers. It's a thing.
Mhm.
I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. Those things
Mhm.
exist. There are people who are still doing this career whose love is not in it anymore.
Mhm.
Um, and that shows, and that does affect our centers.
Mhm.
But for me personally, I've had really good experiences with really good departments,
Mhm.
um, so far, which is, why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because we need more people to have positive experiences
Mhm.
in this line of work. So we stay. Um, you know, the world needs more dispatchers. The shortages decrease. Mandatory overtime decreases, and we can focus on the awareness of the good part of the job. You
Mhm.
know.
It is such a satisfying job. And I bore easily. So knowing that the next call could shift everything,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
was one of the things that kept me in it. So I was in it for about 14 years, over a 17-year period.
Yeah.
I did get to where I couldn't work the overnight shift anymore. I couldn't sleep.
Yeah. I can see that. I'm going to day shift tomorrow, for the first time really in 5 years since my training.
Mhm.
So that's going to be an interesting
Yeah.
experience, to say
So
the
are you a
least.
12-hour shift?
Yeah, 12. Yeah,
And
6
so
to
6 to
6.
6?
6 to 6. So
Yeah.
luckily my commute's not too bad, and I can just kind of roll and go. But um, yeah, I'm not excited for
Yeah.
day shift.
The
Definitely
coolest
a
thing
letdown.
I found the coolest thing about day shift, it was fascinating to me because I was on 8-hour shifts, so it was 6
Okay.
until 6 till 2.
Mm,
Piece of cake.
yeah.
Because I'd been on the midnight shift for so long
Mm,
that the idea of being functional from 6 in the morning on was just this strange idea. And I
mhm.
found that I would go into work, and before I was really, really wide awake, it was 10.
Yeah.
And so, okay, my shift is half over. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it made it harder to get things done, when there were the car crashes before 7 in the morning and all that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
yeah, it was okay, cool. I'm alive now. All right, now we can have some fun.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping for, like a 6 hour settle in, and then like buckle up, let's go for the second 6, and then it'll fly. But
Yeah.
we shall
And
see.
honestly, it's all our own attitude. A
Mhm.
toxic environment. I don't want to sugarcoat it. There are people who are ugly and mean,
Mhm.
and we don't have to let them ruin our day.
Mhm.
We don't have to give them our energy. We can just let people be toxic. And that's way easier to say than to do. But we can learn those skills.
Mhm.
And we can stop gossip in our midst.
Mhm.
And the way you stop gossip is when somebody tries to tell you a story, you counter it. That's
Mhm.
not been my experience of her. How true is this?
Mhm.
And it doesn't take long for a gossip to stop trying to talk to you.
It's
I've
very true.
experienced that.
Yeah.
And so if you want to stop gossip, you can do that. If you want to have more appreciation in your center, I just did a TikTok on this. I don't know when I'm publishing it. But if you want more appreciation in your center, start appreciating more.
Mhm.
And automatically there's more appreciation in your center. If you
Mhm.
want more fun, bring it. Bring it.
Mhm.
You don't have to sit there and say the environment is what's wrong, because we create our own environments. But it's a lot easier to do when we're healthy. It's a
Mhm.
lot easier to do when we're well centered and we're not out of shape in our gremlins.
Very true. I think one of the things that I've talked about in a past episode, I think it was with Keely, is that, really taking control of your dispatch career, right? Like
Mhm.
putting yourself in creating spaces for you to excel, and learn, whether it
Mhm.
be you want to be the best CTO, you want to be the best shift partner, or you want to really learn about the radio side of
Mhm.
dispatch, like really being intentional of creating those um, relationships with the people who are going to help you advance in those situations. And I think that, like you said, is the same just for our attitudes in our center. You're right.
Mhm.
Like if we're feeling unappreciated and this and that, it doesn't have to be from our managers,
Mhm.
bringing us candy, like we can bring our own candy,
Right.
and then I think in addition to that, it's that, and I think this is a life lesson, but it's also relevant in our dispatch centers, is that, whatever we're bringing, I'm not doing it to get something back. Like, I'm not bringing candy this week because Eddie's going to bring me candy next week. Like, I'm
Mhm.
bringing it because I like candy and I think someone else is going to like candy.
Mhm.
Right. And if we
Yeah.
don't get it back, I've still given that out into the world. And even if I don't receive that back in the same manner that I gave it out,
Right.
maybe someone's going to give it back to me in another way. But
Mhm.
when we throw that first, offering, we create space for people to go, oh, well, I'm going to give this back in this way to that person.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably the most devastating thing to do is try to shift your shift to be more positive and
Mm-hmm.
bring in the positivity every day and get so disappointed when it doesn't work with other people.
Mm-hmm.
No, we just need to stay with ourselves and bring the
Mm-hmm.
positivity anyway,
Mm-hmm.
whether anybody else gets it or not,
Exactly.
because rising tide raises all ships.
Mm-hmm.
When one gets better, it all gets better, and you can't help it.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to not expect things from other people. That's a hard thing to learn.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not natural for humans to not expect things from other people.
So true. So
Just
true.
we just grow up that way,
Yeah.
So it's very fun.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I wanted to make sure that we talked about is you are collaborating on a book that comes
Yes.
out October 1st. Tell us a little bit
Yes.
about that.
The name of the book is Victim to Victory.
Mm,
A podcaster who interviewed me, I think a year and a half ago,
mm,
invited me to write my story as one of the stories in the book. And so it's different people that she's interviewed. And we're all people who have been to the dark side and found our way through. And
mm.
so there's stories of hope and encouragement. Um, so I think there's 18 of us. And I'm
Okay.
so excited because I've listened to this podcast and some of the stories are just amazing.
Mm.
Um, I don't want to put myself down, but mine is not the most amazing story. Mine's pretty amazing, but it's not the most.
Mhm.
And so it's been very exciting. One of the things that's been an amazing challenge is that our word limit for our chapter is 1,200 words.
Oh, wow.
I can do 1,200 words, just talking about lunch yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so that's been very challenging, but I did get it done, and the editor was very kind.
Aw.
So it wasn't brutal. It was just hard.
Yeah. What an experience to be able to like put pen to paper. I mean, I think we all talk to people about our life stories and the obstacles we've overcome. And, us in these spaces, we're a little more vulnerable than maybe the next individual with, our struggles and our stories. But actually having to sit down and write it down, I mean, that must have been a process in
Mhm.
itself, right?
Just figuring out now what do I need to leave in to tell the story when the story was this long,
Mhm.
but I can only use this, even though it was so many different things. And so that was the hardest part, was cutting it down and still telling the story. I think I did okay. I'll have to let my readers find out. So
Yeah. Oh, and that's October 1st, right?
October 1st.
Okay.
And I think that no, this is what I'm told, is that we
Mhm.
will have a 24-hour period where we'll be allowed to give it away on Kindle for free.
Awesome.
And what I want to do is give it away on Kindle for free and invite reviews.
Mm.
I want as many reviews as we can get because that helps it become more visible on Amazon.
Yeah.
And more visibility on Amazon means more people will be exposed and we'll have more opportunity to help people. And that's what it's all about. One of the cool things is that the revenues from the book, the podcasters in Australia.
Oh,
Um,
very cool.
and so the revenues from the book are going to support a backpack program for foster youth, which is part of my
Mm.
heart. I love children, and I worked
Mhm.
with children who needed help for 9 years, and so I was like, okay, I can do this. This is a great cause. So
That's awesome. So,
yeah,
so cool. Well, I'll definitely include all that information in the information section of our talk as well, so everyone can check that out.
awesome.
Um, if people want to find you and connect with you, where do they go to do that?
Okay, so I'm on TikTok.
Hey!
I'm on TikTok daily. It's Edie_Devilbiss. And I need more followers. I'm only at 600. I need 1,000 followers so I can do
Ooh.
lives. I'm
Oh
on
my god.
Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Um, and Ashley, I'm going to send you a QR code for self-care blueprint that your
Okay.
audience can download. It's 911 self-care blueprint because,
Awesome.
self-care is an emergency.
Ain't that the
I
truth?
honestly think that we need to take better care of ourselves
Mhm.
globally, but especially in 911. Your life is worth your effort.
Mhm.
You cannot, I mean, This job can tear you apart
Mm-hmm.
physically and emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to recognize when we're having problems and be willing to get help, because therapy works.
It
Therapy's
does.
hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. Don't let
Mhm.
anybody tell you it's easy. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
but it works. And on the other side of therapy, there is the ability to feel joy again. You don't have to be numb. You don't
So
have
true.
to have a negative life. You can have joy. So self-care is key. And so the blueprint is the crystallization of the habit process that I've developed.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely include the blueprint and all that information when we post this. Thank you so much for joining me today, Edie, and being a fan. And I'm a fan now, and I love your TikToks. And again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you jumping on with me.
You betcha. Thank you so much, Ashley. And it's so cool to meet you. I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh, it was such a. I like texted. I was like, oh my god, I just met someone who knows me on the. It was so great. It was such a wonderful experience for me as well.
Good.
Truly.
So
Okay, I'll
fun.
be right back with you. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right, everybody. That was our episode here today. I'm going to include all of the links to connect with Edie on TikTok, her blueprint, to get all of that information. It'll all be included in the text of this video so you don't miss out. Until next time, see you guys later. Stay raspy. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Let's Talk Dispatch. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube at The Raspy Dispatcher, follow us on Instagram, and check out Let's Talk Dispatch anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'll see you next time, and stay raspy.